in terms of, especially when boys are little, you'll see them playing with trucks, boom, or you see them playing with just different things where they're being more physical than verbal. But you have the girls, and we all know about teenage girls, how they're very verbal, they'll communicate. And so my hope is to just gain an understanding of what I can do to help our community, especially our boys, to be able to have some healing, communication, and all around awareness of mental health and how it affects us.
Okay, so I'm going to start off the conversation with a question to you. Why do you think, as men, we tend to not be able to verbalize how we feel?
Well, it's from my experience, it's kind of like a stigma, right? So that's kind of like we don't, when our men talk, sometimes when they communicate, it's not as effective because they don't like to show their feelings, or they don't like to communicate weaknesses, or they don't like to say, you know what, you really upset me right now. And I really don't know how to tell you that in any other way but to go to the gym or to do something more physical. And I think that's a disconnect for us. I think it's a definite disconnect. Now, you have some men that'll definitely articulate, that'll definitely say what's going on in their heart and on their mind. But I think as a community, we're taught, as our men are taught, to be a bit more abrasive, a bit more what they call manly. So I think it's seen as sometimes as a weakness.
Okay. Anybody else wanna? Okay.
I'll give you an example. So let's talk about the other day or a couple of weeks ago when we were hearing all of these different things about Will Smith, or we're seeing all of these different things about Kanye West. They're communicating in a way where it's very effective, right? But then there's a stigma that's against it, like, oh my gosh, Will Smith is being soft. Oh my gosh, you know, just those different things that are associated with that. And you know what? To be honest, they were really speaking what was on their heart to say.
Anybody else wanna chime in?
Yeah, I got something I would like to say about that. So, you mentioned a good point about the whole stigma and being manly. But how does a man supposed to communicate and be vulnerable and be emotional, but still maintaining respect from his woman? Because as you know, the masculine and feminine energy. So he doesn't want to be too emotional and too feminine, and give off that energy. But then she's like, if he does it too much, oh, he's soft, he weak. She can run all over him. But then if he don't communicate, my man doesn't communicate with me. He's too hardcore. He don't open up. So how should a woman go about that, or at least put him at ease?
Absolutely, that's a great question. And I guess there is a balance. And what I want to say is I can't speak across the board. I don't want to overgeneralize, but you definitely want to be true to yourself, right? So you definitely want to be able to kind of test the waters and see, like if you're talking about in a relationship specifically, right? When you're dating and when you're first getting to know each other according, that would be the opportunity to tell them, well, you know what, this is the way I communicate, or what they call communication style, right? And then just see if that's a match as well, because there's some women that can't communicate either, right? And some of those things are called maladaptive behaviors when I'm a veteran. So when I'm in different situations, I might automatically revert to that. Or I'll give you another example. I'm from Queens, New York. So when I'm driving in New York City, I'm ducking and dodging in traffic and I'm being what they call aggressive. But when I come back to Louisville, it seemed like, oh my gosh, you're driving like you're late. But these are the things that I had to relearn. And it's kind of like rewiring your brain. Because if we're in a situation to where, like me, I grew up around domestic violence, right? So then there comes a time when it's like, well, hold on just a minute. The way that I learned to communicate is not always effective. So there's so many different variables that come into a person's communication style. So one of those maladaptive behaviors might be that I found a man that's able to be vulnerable and that's able to communicate, and I don't know how to accept that. So based on my history and my own experience, I might see them as soft, or I might see them as, all of those different condescending words that says communication is not good. But like I said, those are some of the things that I would address in the beginning.
So my next question is, you mentioned it earlier that what mentioned it earlier in regards to in the Black community about we like to hide secrets. And what do you feel, in your personal view, what can we do to kind of reverse or change that type of behavior of we will hide secrets until the funeral comes? That's when we find out all the deep dark secrets that were in the family.
Right. So I would encourage an open line of communication. And again, in our culture, sometimes we're big on respect, right? So some things we perceive as disrespectful, but they're necessary conversations. So we'll take my grandmother. She was 90 years old. And I asked her about basically our history, because she was born of she had another father than her sisters and brothers. And her mother was raised as sisters because there was a stigma attached to that. So when my grandmother turned 20, that's when her grandmother told her, well, you know what, you and your sister, that's your actual mom, right? So then with my grandmother, I'm asking her about her dad's history. And you know what she says? That's his family. That's not really our business. And I think part of that is shame that comes along with that. So we have to be willing to admit the mistakes that we've made, not necessarily so our family will be ashamed, but so the next generation doesn't do the same thing. So I think we need to have an awareness that this is who I am, this is what I've endured, and I'm bringing it to you as a way to say, not laugh at me, not joke about me, but learn from my mistakes. And I think it needs to have an open line of communication. So the way that I was brought up was you don't tell family secrets, right? Don't tell family secrets. That's like the worst thing that you can do. But guess what? If there's some hurt and some pain in there, we need to talk about that. We need to talk about that in order to heal from it and move on from it. So it's just like a soda bottle, right? If I have a soda and I shake it up one time, the bubbles might go down. Shake it up again, the bubbles might go down again, but I shake, and then I open it, it's going to explode. So we need to stop internalizing, right? And then we need to be able to make people safe enough to have an open dialogue about what's going on in our community.
Anybody else? Like I said, I want to dominate the conversation.
I have a question. Are you getting more people? My name is Sonia, by the way. Are you getting more people reaching out to you, especially with what's going on? Are more people, our communities reaching out and open, saying they need counsel or willing to, open up and talk about what's going on?
Oh, absolutely. So part of what I've been doing here in Louisville with a lot of the Black Lives Matter, we've partnered with them and been able to go down and speak to the protesters about healing and having different conversations. And you would be surprised at the amount, because I'm just passing out literature, giving out my information and some other Black therapist information in the area. You would be surprised in the amount of people that just want to talk, that looks just like us. They just want to talk. They want to talk about this racial trauma. They want to talk about what's been going on within their own selves, because even at the protests, when you go home, you're left with some thoughts, whether they be good, bad, or indifferent. And there was this one mom, her son was biracial. She was Caucasian. Her son was biracial. And she didn't have a lot of questions, but her son did. and he was 13 or 14, so that's like pre-adolescent, right? So he wants to know, where do I fit in all of these things? And then we needed to give mom psychoeducation as to, guess what, mom, this affects you too. You need to be having conversations with baby boy about what could happen, what life looks like. And so, of course, she's going to have racial trauma from that. So people have definitely been reaching out because they have these feelings and emotions that they don't know what to do with it.
I mean, because I have a 17 and a 20-year-old, and Kobe can tell you, and I hear from a lot of people, they say, well, you know, you have some respect for young men. It's like, you know, A, B, C, and D. This, the police brutality, and I have open conversations with them, but sometimes they look at me as if, you know, like we're not babies, and I had to kind of break it down to them, explain to them, I understand you're 17 and 20, but the world is changing, and when the world changes, you have to realize things are not the way they used to be. And it's not that you're living in fear, that you're just trying to tell them, be cautious, be careful of your surroundings. When I grew up, for example, my mother always knew who my friends were. This generation, I noticed they don't like want to come forth with stuff, or if you ask them things, they're like, oh, you know, da da da. But then what I've learned to do is explain why I'm asking you this, and now they'll go ahead and say, okay, Mom, A, B, C, and D, because if anything happens, I need to know who you were with and who you were around.
It's excellent. Exactly right. Exactly right. And it's just different ways because, like I said, especially, well, let me back up. I've got a 17-year-old son, right? It is like I parent him differently than I do the girls. My girls are 23 and 24. So with my son, I suggest things with him, right? Because he has in his mind this idea that they're growing up, especially your son that's 20. He's in the launching stage. So that means he's definitely trying to gain his independence. So for the 17-year-old, they're kind of teetering the fence, right? They're kind of like, okay, well, I want to listen to mama, but I don't really want to be labeled, right? So I think it's always good to what I call stay in their ear, you know, but I would also ask them, can I give you a suggestion? You know, I really like what you're doing. I really like that you want to be independent. I really appreciate that you're mindful of what's going on in the community. But you know what? All this stuff just really scares me to death, right? And so this is the approach that I took with my son. If you don't mind, would you care to just text me every couple of hours while you out? I know that you're safe. I know you make the right decisions, but my anxiety just gets so high that I just really need to hear from you, you know? And so a couple of times he's like, and all of this stuff started with Trayvon Mark. My son went to the store, came back 10 minutes later, and I was in complete tears because I felt like it took too long, you know? So in order to make him not feel like, you know, he's doing something wrong, and in order to make me communicate to him what I'm feeling as well, he got it. You know, so he'll text, or when he forgets to text, then I'll text, son, are you okay? Or I'll say, son, how can I support you better? You know, and then he'll tell me. And a lot of times it's not just him, it's his friends as well. So especially it's harder with this COVID-19, you can invite him and his friends over, you know, and like today we had a conversation about John Lewis. So just getting together and having these conversations with them and trying to build with not just the boys, but your boys as friends as well. You know, invite them all over for pizza if you can, especially with the social distancing, if that's possible, you know, and just try to get to know them in any way you can.
I definitely appreciate that. I like the idea of you say, can I make a suggestion? So that way it's not like treating them as like they're babies. I like that. I think I'm going to definitely use that because, you know, I know they're growing up. I know they're not babies anymore. They're not little boys. They're going to, you know, have decisions that they're going to make on their own, and rather if it's right or wrong. Something that we had a conversation with that really kind of helped me a lot was I did more listening than talking to, and it kind of gave me an idea of, you know, because what I keep telling people, they be thinking that, oh, because you got a 17 to 20-year-old, oh, you got it good. So them going back to school, my son is a senior. And I said, Lord, how can I talk to him about this? Because I know this is his last year, and I know what he wants to do, but I know what's out there. And
Right.
I listened to him, and then that's when I came up and gave him a scenario, and then he was kind of like, okay, I understand, Ma. I understand now
Absolutely.
why you feel the way you do.
Absolutely. So just like you're saying, the parenting style changes the older that they get. And even when they're at home, you know, like people say, oh, they're grown almost. No, you still have to hold them close. Because in age, you know, or in size, if your son is anything like mine, he's 6 foot and some change, 200 and something pounds. But we still are the guys.
I have 6'4" and 6'2".
Exactly. So being a mom, we kind of have to appeal to that. We can't go toe to toe with our boys. You know, like you better. You know, no, because that's going to push them away, and you don't want to tack after them like that. You want to have them understand, and I think the delivery is part of that. Just being able, just like you said, having a conversation with them and suggesting things with them. You know, and then you, mom, rest in the knowledge that if they're 17 and 20, that you pretty much did a good job with them. And they pretty much know, you know, what's right and what's wrong in this world. And if they haven't gone left yet, they probably won't, right? So I would tell them that. I'm proud of the things that you do. And I know that you're going to make the decisions, but I would just put it back on me. Like, I just want to be safe. For my own knowledge, I just want to make sure that when the police pull you over, that you know to call me, or that you know to put it on speaker, or that you know to be mindful of your manners and the things that you're saying, right? So I think delivery, just like you're saying, is everything.
Okay, thank you so much.
You're welcome. My pleasure.
So I was reading just before the meeting, and I know when it comes to trauma, the hot topic that I've heard the term thrown around, PTSD. Do you believe, as a culture, we suffer from PTSD?
What was the question? I'm sorry.
Oh, I had said
Talking to me?
I had did some research prior to the meeting, and I was reading in regards to PTSD, in regards to trauma. Do you believe in our culture that we suffer from that? Because I hear a lot of people, they throw that term now with and associate it now with us as a culture.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So let me talk to you guys about the ACEs study. First and foremost, I do believe in trauma in our community, and now they're putting a term on it called racial trauma. And what the ACEs study says is that based on what's going on in your life as a child, certain behaviors come from that as an adult. So let's get a child that might be 6, 7 years old, right? So they're at home and mom, dad yells all of the time, curses each other out all of the time. Once they get to school, they're going to do the exact same thing, right? So when they get to school and the teacher reprimands them for that, the first thing they want to do is suspend them, not really looking at what's going on, not really understanding the whole picture. So I definitely think that there's some racial trauma that's involved with that. And then we can take it a step further. We can talk about mom, just like what she was saying, that's a form of racial trauma. Just like when I was talking about when my son went to the store around that Trayvon era, and I was just so worried about him coming back, and he just went to the store and came back, but I'm crying, right? So that's a symptom of someone being traumatized. So we have these signs and symptoms of being traumatized. So it's based on our own walk within this thing called life. I'm sorry, your son is so adorable.
Oh, thank you.
But yes, we do have trauma. But again, we have to address it, Jacoby. We have to put our finger on that this is exactly what this is. This is exactly what's happening, so we can be able to treat that. Because after a while, like we were talking about earlier, especially in my community, if you have men that are very verbal and communicate, you know, sweetheart, you're hurting my feelings today. they're looked at as a certain way. So then you get out in upper echelon, grown type America, and you're supposed to be able to communicate, in what they consider to be an effective manner. But part of that is, well, wait a second, I was raised like this, I was taught like this, and this is kind of where I am. That's a form of racial trauma because based on what we've endured, this is what's going on now, and it's kind of like a disconnect or a gap.
Okay. So for my young men that are currently on the Zoom conversation now, well, I would say this. How would I say like this? For parents to be able to have conversations in regards to what's going on, how should they approach it to our young men to get them to really understand not saying you gotta be scared, but just understand the severity of what's going on, especially being a young black man in America?
I would open that dialogue, and my first question to them would be, what do you think about what's going on? And I would leave it very open. And based on social media, you would be surprised about the information that they know. And I would definitely talk to them about that, talk to them about how they feel about that, and then talk about how that's affecting them. And then have a guided conversation from there.
Oh, but what if I'm gonna say I'm 17 years old, and let's say I'm a role play. Let's say I'm your son,
okay,
and you was to talk to me about it. I'll be like, Mom, I'm Teflon. Ain't nothing gonna happen to me. So how would you address that son that feels as though he's Teflon, he's bulletproof, it won't happen to him? So how would you be able to address that to that son?
absolutely. The first thing I would say is, son, you know what? I know you are so hard. I know you've been through a lot of things. I would first affirm him. I would say, baby, you know what? You are so tough. I've seen you on that football field. I've seen you knocking people down. I know that you're very tough. But as your mom, there's certain things that I got to teach you that you don't already know. And this world, the way it is right now, really scares me. It really, really scares me. And I just want to give you some information that I've learned from my experience that might help you. It might help you along the way. Can I talk to you about some people that may have felt the same way that you feel, but things have gone differently for them? And one of the people I would mention is Trayvon Martin. And then I would go that direction, and I would sit down and I would do research with them. And I would more so answer their questions that they have. And I would leave it open, for them to ask me whatever they want to ask me. If they say, Mom, that's just them. That didn't happen. Mom, and okay, no problem. Then I would go to someone else. And then I would go to someone else. And, they said men lie, women lie, numbers don't lie, right? So then we have this amount of group. We got all of these people that it's happened to. And guess what? They've been just as tough as you, baby. They've been just as smart as you, sweetheart. I just don't want it to happen to you.
Because when I have the conversation with my young men that's in the program now, some of them take it serious, but some of them have the carefree mentality. So I kind of wanted them to hear that's on this Zoom now. I'm not pointing out no names because this is generalized to all of them. So when they hear the ones that's on here, they tell it to their brothers. Was a generalized blanket statement, but so yeah, so that's anybody else have anything else to say? Any other questions or comments?
No, she was wonderful.
Yeah, I'll say something. My question would be is, what do you see is the biggest challenge that the Black community face when it comes to mental health?
Awareness.
Okay.
I think one of the challenges is that we have people that are on the front line right in the spotlight right now. And Kanye West, he's a huge one of them, you know, and Tamar Braxton, she's another one of them going on right now. And they're struggling. And so I would bring that to the forefront. And I think part of that, you know, with Kanye, everybody was laughing and joking, but he seriously suffers from bipolar too. And when all of this stuff started, I said there had to be an event. Something happened to trigger him, right? And it was his mom's birthday. So based on his mom's birthday, he started having episodes and he started having problems. But within our community, we don't hear too many people saying that they're bipolar, schizoaffective, schizophrenic. We don't hear too many people saying that. We might hear, oh, that person, that's Uncle such and such. He's always been a bit different, right? Or we'll say, oh, that's because of such and such. He's always been a bit flaky, right? But we have to put words to things to let people know that these things happen in our community, and we have to be able to address it to heal from it. And I'll give you an example. If I have a toothache, my mom can't do anything about it. My dad can't do anything about it. I have to go to the dentist. I have to get it pulled. I have to get antibiotics to heal the infection. You know, those are steps that I have to take. I can go around talk, oh no, my tooth don't hurt it, but it's killing me. And it's the same thing with mental health. We have to be able to create the space where people feel safe enough to say, you know what, I'm not feeling good today. I may look good, but I'm really struggling with some things right now. And I need a mental health day. I need a day to get myself together. I need some self-care. I might need to, like, as for my son, he'll go out and hang out with his friends, you know, when this stuff gets too hard for him. And that's okay with me. I give him that space. I try to create a space where he can come and talk to me. It may not always sound good to me, right? You remember we were talking about people are big on respect. So it may not always sound the way that I want it to sound, because sometimes when the world gets too much for him, I've seen my son bust out crying. So, oh no, son, you can't cry. Oh no, son. And while he's crying, son, what's going on? Say it. And sometimes he's yelling. Should I say, oh no, you're not about to yell at me? No, get it all out. Get it out, because I know about that internalization, and I know he's been holding this stuff in, just like shaking that soda can. And whatever the straw that was broke the camel's back, now he's available and he's communicating. It might look like screaming, it might look like cursing, but guess what? He needs me in that moment, and I'm addressing his concerns. So I think we have to leave that space open and say, you know what? You're safe. It's okay to feel the way that you feel. How can I support you? What can I do to help you in this moment? I see that you're not doing good, but I'm here for you.
Okay. So my follow-up question would be, how important or what impact does either absentee father or just growing up with a single parent mother plays on a traumatic experience, you know, for a young man or even for an adult for that matter?
That's an excellent question. And I'm a single mom. And what I did, I surrounded my son around positive male figures. So he's played so many different sports. And I think we have to create a forum that says, yes, I'm a single mom, but I don't have all the answers. And I do need positive male role models to be around my son to help create him and shape him and mold him into the man he needs to be. You remember that old saying that it said it takes a village to raise a child? That's kind of what it's like. So I have to acknowledge first as a single parent that I'm not Superwoman and I don't have all of the answers. I probably don't have most of the answers. So I'm going to reach out to my village. right? It might be uncles, it might be cousins, it might be just positive male role models in the community. So my son had played football for the longest, and last year he fractured his hip, and he totally got so depressed because that's all he had known. One of the guys that played in the NFL, he went to my son's high school that he currently goes to. I reached out to him, and guess what? He hit me back, and I was so surprised. But that was such a blessing because what I wasn't able to say to my son, that's just mom talking again. He was able to say to my son, he was able to say, you know what, I've been through that experience. I know what it's like, and I'm still here, and I'm still going. So I think calling on those resources might be a part of that. That'll give mom some assistance, and just bringing them in really close. What was the other part of the question? I'm sorry.
No, you pretty much answered it. It was just basically talking about single motherhood and just basically absentee father. Because I told my story last week, and I come from a single parent home as well, and my grandfather was pretty much my role model. He died when in my young adolescence between 13 and 14, and I was fortunate enough that I had a lot of positive. I had the whole village around me, but I still was missing that void at home from having a father in the home. So my follow-up question to this one now would be, how does a young adult, how does a young man or a young woman address the daddy issues if they was to come see you? Like, do they talk about the neglect? Do they talk about the shame? Do they feel depressed? Like, what are usually their emotions, and how do they, what does that journey look like?
I would talk about all of that with them, and I would tell them that I would probably do a therapy referral for them. I would definitely talk about all of that, and that's another part of that ACEs study that we were talking about, and that's a part of trauma as well, right? Because like with my son, Dad's never been on the football field with him, so I'm sure he's internalized those different things. He probably hasn't, or I don't know if he will talk to me about, but I know that exists. So what I would do, I would say, son, you know what? I know you can't talk to me about certain things. Would you like to speak with someone about that? I would acknowledge it with him. I wouldn't push it up under the rug and I would, oh, you're okay. No. I would open that line of communication and I would probably say, you know what? I bet you have been hurting based on what you've experienced. You have done so well with the things that you have in front of you. But I definitely want you to reach your full potential, son. And if you feel like that you're ill-equipped, or that you feel like there's some things that you want to talk about or some things that you want to heal or resolve from, I definitely would like you to speak to someone.
Okay. And my last question on this subject would be, what are your thoughts on, the continual generation of neglect? So let's say, for example, let's say, for example, the grandfather, his dad wasn't in his life. Now the grandfather's not in the dad's life. The dad's not in the son's life. So now the son grows up, let's say, for example, he may potentially become a husband, or he may decide, later on in life, he has children. And then now he's nervous of continuing that lineage, and he doesn't know about trying to be a father because his father wasn't in his life, and his grandfather, and so on and so on.
Right. Well, the flip side of that coin, what I would say is you remember how that felt when your father wasn't in your life. So what we used to call generational curses in our family can be generational blessings. So I understand, right, that you didn't have a father in your life. And my dad was in the military, so he was always gone, right? But as time goes on and when you become an adult, you remember what that felt like. And so I would suggest that put those feelings into action so your children don't have to endure it. And in relationships sake, I would communicate that, you know what? My dad hasn't been in my life. I love you and I'm trying my best. And if there's anything that you want to talk to me about, or if there's anything that you feel like that I'm not doing right, please come and talk to me about that. And I would try to kind of have an open line of communication from that. But I don't want you to think that you're ill-equipped. Because if you've made it this far without having dad and dad's dad and 3 and 4 generations of dad, I think now would be a good time for you to acknowledge and apply those feelings that you were growing up with, those emotional or the trauma that you were growing up with. And I think that you should put it into action. And I think that it's safe for us to say that there are some men that grew up without men in their lives, but they're doing pretty good, right? So then I would capitalize on that as well. I don't want you to think just because you haven't had those things, right, that you're not able. I think part of that might be fear. But I think just if somebody has that mindset that I didn't have these things and I want to do better, I think that's the beginning of the next chapter.
I like to piggyback off of that because me growing up, my biological father, he wasn't there. He was like in and out of my life, but by the grace of God, I had my dad, my dad, as well as my grandfather and my neighbors that kind of helped mature and watch me grow. But it was always, I did have that fear when I do actually have my first child, would my biological father, that pattern, go into me. That was something that I did battle with for a while until I realized that I won't be him. I won't be the one that breaks the cycle. And like I said, now as well, y'all saw, I have 3. That's one of 3. I have 3 sons that I'm very proud of, and minus the one that was just on the camera now. But like I said, if it wasn't for the positive male role models in my life, I think my fear would have grown and it would have probably overtaken my life. But that I had such a great foundation, it was able to curb that fear and not let it just take full control. So for young men that are currently not having their fathers, I would say, as Ms. Smith said, just get around positive male role models and, just listen. Just listen and, we may, it may sound outdated, but a lot of the things we are telling, for all my young men that's on here now, a lot of things that we're saying, it fits in your current times. It's just we're saying it from more mature point in our lives. So I advise just my 3 young men that's on here, just really all the information that was given, soak it up and really like internalize and just think about it. Not answer, just really think. And just think about, reflect on your life at its current state. And, just be blessed, be thankful, because, there's kids out there that are searching for what you guys are currently having now, which is people that are here trying to give you great wisdom. So I would. Sorry, you ready to say something?
Oh no, I just want to say thank you, Ms. Smith, everything that you said, because I kind of said, wow, that's confirmation, because what you all just talked about when Joe asked that question about they call it, some people call it generational curse. I don't like to say generational curse. I like to say, unfortunately, they following that example that was set before them. So when you see a bad example or an example that's not good, that's one of the times when you want to change, because I'm a single parent, and the one thing that I did was I didn't think about me. I wanted to focus on what can I do. And when they got to be a certain age, when you said you had them playing sports, I smiled because I said, wow, she's talking about what I went through. And then when they got to be teenagers, I'm like, okay, Lord, what now? You know, they were tired of sports. Then along came Faith Place, which is this amazing arts and education program. But I always kept them around positive male role models. They had their granddad, my brother, their cousin Chris, and then as teenagers, the arts and education director, her husband, you know, take on these boys as if they're his. And now that they're older, they sit there and they tell me sometimes, they're like, Mom, I know you don't think that we appreciate everything you've done, but we do. And a lot of times it's just
All right. Um, so, so Joe, you have any final thoughts?
Yeah, just final thoughts. I'll wrap this up. But yeah, I made that promise to myself because I'm a junior, and I have a son as well. He's 4, and I made a promise to myself. I think I might have been, I think I was in maybe 7th or 8th grade, or even 9th grade, and I had told myself that if I ever had any children, I would make sure I was in uh, their life, because I know what it was like growing up. Where it sucked. Like you got all of your friends, and then you also have teacher parent day and stuff like that, and you got everybody and they dads and they moms and everybody showing up. And my mom always had to work, and then my mom also was going to school. So my grandfather and my grandmother would sometimes fill in, but sometimes I'll be at school by myself, and this person, oh, my dad does this, or my dad does that, and I couldn't really say nothing. I couldn't really say
Right.
what my dad did. So it was a very, very, it was a very, very emotional and a very, traumatic experience. And then when my grandfather
Yeah.
died, it really kicked it up. So I had always made a promise to myself that no matter what, if I ever had children, whether I was married, whether if I was with the mom or not, that I would always find a way to be in my child's life so that they know that their dad really cares for them. Because like I said, the experience that I went through sucked. It was really, really terrible. And I would never want my kids to go through that. So that's why
I'm
I made a
sorry you
promise to,
experienced that.
yeah. So I made a promise to myself to break that curse, or to break that chain.
And I think that's the best thing that we can do, because Maya Angelou said, when you know better, you do better. And as adults looking back, we don't know, what was going on with our parent, with our absent parent. We don't, it's hard to say what they were going through. But now that we're adults, we can implement positive things into our children's life and have that understanding that you have. So what you guys are doing now, you're giving back to the community, right? Because you know what that felt. So what would happen if you didn't, if you never experienced that? That's what I also do. I like to look in that rear view mirror and say, if something changed along the way, would I still be in the same place? So sometimes we come to the understanding that everything that I went through was necessary to get at this point that I am right now. And the best part of that is that you can articulate to these boys, guess what? I'm not telling you anything that I read. I'm not telling you anything that was told to me. This was my own experience. So when those boys are feeling a certain way and they don't want to articulate it, or they don't want to put a name to, I'm overwhelmed, I'm frustrated, I'm sad right now, I'm angry, you can pull that out of them just based on your own experience, because you know what that felt like. So once you're able to do that, then you make a connection with them, and you're able to have them grow from that. And then when they get older, you know what, I had this positive male role model that was in my life, and he taught me, just because my dad wasn't there doesn't mean that I can't excel, doesn't mean that I can't do. So you're planting a seed with them. And I would advise you to share your experience with them, because that's what's relatable to them. right? If we come through dressed up all nice all the time, kids can't relate to us. We have to be able to gain that understanding of where they are and connect the bridge to where we are, right? Because like he was saying, they may feel like some of our information is dated, but there's nothing new under the sun. Nothing is new under the sun. So we learn from our experiences and then we grow and we teach others, and that's part of our village as well. If I see a young man, the first thing I'm gonna say is, "Hey King, how you doing? How's school going? You doing good? All right." So they would know they don't have anyone else. They have Miss Corinsa that's gonna ask them, "How's everything going? Oh, you doing good in school? I got something for you. Come here." Because you never know. Just like you said, mom was working and my mom worked a lot too. So a lot of things I did not learn at home. A lot of things I had to learn in the community, be it right, wrong, or indifferent. So we're able to give them that back and to plant those positive seeds with them, and not only show them, but also teach them, because love is an action. So you loving on them, you're teaching them, and you're showing them. That creates a safe environment for them so they can open up, you know?
I totally agree. So, first, let's give Miss Corinsa a hand clap for an amazing workshop. Thank you again for doing this this evening. I'm greatly appreciative on behalf of the Young Men of Distinction. And we actually met, I want to say last week.
Right.
Last week, and she was, we met and we connected, and we, like I said, I'm very grateful for, for her coming and stepping in to fill in, actually, because the person I had this week backed out. So I asked and she said yes. I'm forever grateful. And Miss Corinsa will be back week 6. So we're gonna get a part 2 from the great knowledge that she has given us tonight. I am. It was. I've learned. I've learned a lot. I've always because we're right now at our halfway mark with the workshop. So this is week 4. So I've learned a lot in these 4 weeks so far. And I hope the young men, y'all continue to, y'all may not get it now, but when y'all get to our age, you'll understand all the stuff that we putting into y'all now is going to come back. And y'all gonna be like, you know what? Miss Corinsa, she was right. Or Joe, he was right. Or Kobe was right. It comes back, believe it or not. I think about it all the time now. I can hear my mother, I can hear my dad's voice. It comes to my kids, and I hear how I talk to them, like I sound just like my mother. So trust me, I have those now. But so just cherish these moments and really just soak up this knowledge. And if there's if there's no other questions or any comments, we're gonna close this workshop. Any comments from anybody? Questions?
Very thankful.
Oh, Tyler, go ahead.
I just want to thank you, Ms. Smith, for what you said. I could relate to a lot of the things that you said. I didn't grow up with my dad in the house, but we do have a good relationship, and it's strengthening as I'm getting older. But it was a lot of things I had to learn on my own or with my mom. And I grew up around a lot of women, and it was few male role models, but I did learn a lot from them. But like Joe said, I did recently make like a promise to myself, like I would be there for my children. I wouldn't leave them under any
Awesome.
circumstances. But thank you.
And you know what? I am so proud of you because you're so young, but you have so much wisdom. And I would encourage you to articulate or talk to your dad, about the things that he's missed, in an effort so both of you can heal. That's what I would say. And I would say congratulations on making that pact, because that's where it starts. And I'm going to send you this book, Jacoby. It's about three black doctors in New Jersey. And that's exactly what they did. They made a pact. They came from the inner streets and they said, you know what? We're going to go to school together. We're going to come out on top and we're going to run the world. And so they're still working on that, but they're three doctors, they got their MDs and they're practicing, so you don't have to be part of your experience. You can change the game, and I'm proud of you as a game changer because I see where you're going and your mind is clear and your head is on straight, so you can influence other kings that are around you, right? Because sometimes we get angry and sometimes that anger consumes us. So we have to be able to have an outlet. And it sounds like that you're balanced. So I just want to say thank you for sharing your experiences. And I'm proud of you.
Thank you.
So Jacoby, I'm here for you. If you ever need me, you call me, you can text me, whatever the situation is. And hopefully we can collaborate on some things going forward as well.
Most definitely. So if all hearts and minds are clear, again, thank you for being a part of this week's workshop. Thank you for everybody being on the Zoom call, and we'll see you guys next week.
Take care.
Take care.
Okay.